I want to say good evening to everybody. We have some technology issues that we're sort of waiting to resolve themselves, but I do want to say good evening to the attendees who have joined us here so far this evening for our City Park Community Input Meeting. We are really looking forward to getting your input and your ideas tonight. I'm Renee Casterline. I'm the chair of the Mount Shasta Recreation and Park District Board. And we're going to be getting started here in just a few minutes. The Park and Rec District Board is a Brown Act committee, which means that we will be following an agenda and opening the meeting with our standard procedures, which we will do here in just a couple of seconds. I'm trying to get this up and running live on Facebook so that we can get other people joining us. So I'm just taking a look at that for a minute. Hopefully technology is going to work for us, and then we'll get the meeting started and start moving forward. It's great to see more attendees coming in. And Shannon Shaw, our new district administrator, is going to give you a rundown of how the evening's meeting is going to go and your opportunities for comment. So I want you to know that you're going to get the format and some instructions on how to do that in just a few minutes. And just checking technology one more time. We've got a bunch of folks on the back side of this meeting working to make sure that it goes well. So at this point, I am going to call to order the meeting of the Mount Shasta Recreation and Parks District Board. That needs to begin with a roll call of our board members. Cindy, will you please do a roll call for us?
Brummel Smith.
Here.
Caparazzo.
Here.
Johnston.
Here.
Rush.
Here.
And Chairman Casterline.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And on our agenda, if you happen to be looking at it or familiar with its format, we do have an audience not on the agenda section. And we're not going to do that tonight because you are all here to give input on our new business action item, which is this community input meeting. And before we get it started, what I want to say to everyone out there who's listening now or who may tune into this later, this meeting is the beginning of a series of meetings, and we really want you to know that we are really looking forward to receiving input from the community, really hearing your ideas and having you participate in this process of really envisioning what the park district can be. So tonight you're going to learn a little bit about the district and specifically City Park and have opportunities to engage. And we're trying to provide plenty of different ways that people can participate. And for anyone who ends up watching this as a recording, please know that you can take surveys on the Park District's website. You can reach out to Park District staff and keep following our Facebook page to find out about meetings that come up in the future and to access the recording of this meeting. So I'm excited for us to start the community input section of our master plan update, and we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Shannon Shaw, our district administrator, and Shannon can let you know how the evening's going to go. Thanks a bunch.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, I am Shannon Shaw. I am the district administrator of the Mount Shasta Recreation and Parks District. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is an amazing community, and I greatly appreciate the input that you can provide to us as we go through this master planning process. On the screen that you should be seeing right now, you will see the district map that some of you may or may not be familiar with. Quite a large district that Tom Hesseldins, who is contracted to do the master plan update, will be going into more detail on. Before I introduce Tom, I would like to kind of show you how we're going to be doing this meeting. On your screen, on your toolbar, you should see something similar to what I have up here. There's going to be a little chat feature, a raise hand feature, and a Q&A. Tonight we are going to be focusing primarily on the raise hand so that we're able to hear you and the input that you'll be providing the district. So please use the raise hand feature when we are prompting you for input. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A, and we'll be following that throughout the presentation. Like Renee said, we do have a survey that's going to be available on our website. We would appreciate if everybody took that. Again, all the input we can get is greatly appreciated. And thanks again for attending, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom Hesseldens.
Thank you, Shannon. Are you ready for me to switch screens?
Go for it.
Am I up? You can see it. Good.
Yep.
The way I have this structured is I'll go through a number of bullet points and photos by section, and then at the end of each relevant section, we'll stop and have the feedback from the audience. Just an overview of the planning. Mount Shasta Recreation and Parks District encompasses 142 square miles. It's huge. It goes from the Trinity Divide all the way over to Horse Camp, Black Butte down to Dunsmuir. And within it is the city of Mount Shasta, which is about 4 square miles. That's where the 3 existing parks are that the rec district administers. And then here's Lake Siskiyou, a number of other recreational resources within the boundary of the rec district. A master plan was done in 2003. It focused on facilities at the 3 existing parks, which would be the City Park, Shasta East Park, and the Youth Sports Park, which is next to Sisson School. In that plan, the ice rink had just been started. They didn't have the concrete foundation for it yet, and it called for enlarging the rink, which has been done, and it called for a roof, which obviously hasn't been done. It called for the skate park and the dog park and another field at Sisson School, all of which have now been installed. The 2020 master plan update is to take an even bigger approach to it. Not just facilities, not just the existing 3 parks, but potential other parks, taking a look at programs, looking at funding sources, even looking at Lake Siskiyou. The county had brought up almost 30 years ago when we started the trail project out there that why didn't the rec district run it? So that's something we'll look at, not tonight, but this is roughly the sequence. We'll do the city park tonight, and then the next meeting will be Shasta East Park, yet to be announced. We're going to go through the park theme, buildings and utilities, roads and parking, recreational facilities, and I've separated out the headwaters area because it's so sensitive as a standalone section, enforcement and security, programs and events, and funding. So after each of these sections, we'll pause and you'll have a chance to ask questions, make comments. So we really appreciate you if you will engage us in that. As Shannon and Renee were saying, we need the community's feedback on this because this is a community planning process. The theme that's generally been accepted at the city park is a natural area theme. And it certainly is well endowed, not only with the headwater springs, but this is the largest Ponderosa pine I've seen anywhere in this area. We have some very nice trails now along the creek itself. And I should mention in this discussion of City Park, we're including the 13 acres owned by Crystal Geyser, where they have conveyed a permanent easement for trails to the land trust. We're including the land trust property between there and the end of Kingston Road. And functionally, we're including Spring Hill also, but we're not talking about that tonight. But Crystal Geyser conveyed a permanent easement over that to the land trust as well. And we do look for ways to physically tie Spring Hill to the city park and tie the city park to downtown. That linkage will be discussed in the future. But at the city park, it's a wonderful example of a natural interface between coniferous forest and wetlands. It's at a very abrupt edge. This is a remnant of the natural transition. And then the wetland areas consist of what are called forested wetlands and wet meadow. And within the conifer forest part of that, the city park is well endowed with large trees. We didn't think there'd be any public feedback on that piece of it. We just wanted to give that as an introduction. So with this section that I'm starting now, this is where we would really like your feedback at the end of the section. And we're going to go through this building by building and then talk about some utilities. Here's a map of existing facilities. So we'll be talking about the upper lodge, lower lodge, dance hall, rod and gun club, arts and crafts right here, and the restrooms. This building here was an old restroom that's now used for storage. The upper lodge, all of these buildings, I should say, are in need of maintenance and repairs, and a lot of work has been done. There have been building inspections done on all of the buildings. Some are definitely worse off than others. The upper lodge is in pretty good shape, and I doubt if anybody would want it to be torn down, but with all of these buildings, we put that out there as an option. Do you want to keep repairing and restoring what's here as a historic building? Would you want to do a tear down and rebuild along the same historic architecture? Or would you want to get rid of a building altogether? So with the upper lodge, it's used for many things, and it's a building that I've never heard anyone say they want to get rid of. The lower lodge has some serious problems. It's got foundation problems, electrical problems. The windows aren't insulated. The chimney, which you can't see in this photo, is separated from the building. However, it does get a lot of use. So the question here would be mainly, do you want to see this restored? And often with a major restoration like that, it can be less expensive to just tear it down and rebuild it using the same architecture, but upgrading windows to double pane and insulating, that sort of thing. The dance hall was in the news recently. The rec district had done a lot of recent work on restoring the floors and painting, and it was coming along beautifully. And then this happened, which I'm sure you all read about in the paper. So that in the immediate future will get repaired, but the building inspection report that was done on this had suggested a lot of changes, not the least of which were switching out all of these single pane windows to double pane. So because of what happened here, this could be the right time to undertake that. The Rod and Gun Club has very serious problems, as you see, with the roof and electrical and the foundation. This one internally has been questioned whether or not it should just be demolished, but this is a great example of where we need to hear from the community. What would the community like to see happen with this building? Arts and crafts hasn't been used for a number of years for arts and crafts. It has been used for storage. Another example of single pane windows. And I should point out that all of these buildings date back from when Chico State was using this as a summer educational camp. So this goes back to the 1930s, and that's why these buildings are not insulated and why they don't have double glazed windows. Needless to say, the heating costs are pretty high. So in the long run, it behooves the district to upgrade for the buildings that it will be keeping. The restrooms are more recent. They're small, they need to be enlarged. There's some talk about possibly having additional restrooms on the premises. This is what's called the Kingston Ditch, which diverts water out of the headwaters in the park, but it's a routing that was considered for a sewer line that would run to an existing manhole on property that the Land Trust was able to buy a few years ago with the help of the Rotary Club and the Trail Association. And right now the city park is on a leach field system. It gravity drains down to the dance hall area, and then it's pumped up to a leach field behind the upper lodge. And it can't handle the level of use that the park gets. But this would be a great opportunity to tie it in concert with trail construction. Fire hydrants, the building inspectors noticed that water pressure is not as good as it should be for fully operational hydrants. The city has wanted to put a water tank on Spring Hill for a number of years. This could easily be a bigger picture issue that goes beyond the limits of the rec district, but we're just trying to look at this to see what the situation is right now with utilities. After heavy snowfall a few years ago, when a lot of trees fell in the city park, there were discussions about undergrounding the overhead. And so that's still on the table. That could be part of the master plan update to look for ways to get that undergrounded. So that is the end of that section. And these bullets summarize what I already went through. And if you could work with Shannon on responding, I will, I think I end my screen right now. Is that right?
You can go ahead and leave that up, actually,
Oh,
Tom.
okay. All right.
If anybody has any comments on that section on buildings and utilities, use that raise hand feature and we will open up a mic so you are able to talk on the panel. All right. Again, in the world of COVID, thank you for being patient with us as we do some technical background work here.
Shannon, I see lots of hands raised, and it might be that I have the functionality to start getting those people involved. Do you want me to do that, or are you going to take that?
I believe that's exactly what's happened. If you want to go ahead and
okay, then I will just start at the top of the list right here. What I'm going to do, folks, is hit an allow to talk button, and I'll say your name so that you know. And I believe that when I hit the allow to talk, it will unmute you, and you will then be able to make your comment or ask a question. And so I'm going to start with John Stackcliffe. John, you are our guinea pig to see how this works. I'm going to hit the button now, and you should be unmuted. Okay, John, try it now.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Okay, now we can hear you, John. Yeah, please go ahead with your.
Okay, okay, great. I'm going to be rather quick on this. I believe my positions regarding this section of Tom's presentation were pretty clearly laid out in the Measure P effort, what is now almost 2 years ago. So I think the buildings should stay, the 4 or 5 buildings that were just presented, whether it's a demolish and rebuild or just a thorough refurbishment of what exists. I think it's very important for the rec district to have rental income, and therefore should maintain all the square footage that it can. for that purpose. While I am a bit of a preservationist too, I think the key element here is maintaining rental income or increasing rental income by having really good buildings that people want to use. In favor of the sewer trail combo project, I think that's something that should be a high priority item. I didn't really know too much about undergrounding the utilities, but it sounds like a good idea. So that's a first for me, and I would be very much in favor of that. I think there are some safety and fire issues that would be averted by getting the utilities underground. And Mike Williams brought up an issue regarding fire prevention, and Tom brought up the lack of water pressure at the hydrants. So while that is a multi-jurisdictional issue, obviously something that needs to be addressed. And that's my commentary on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. All right, now I'm going to go on to Barbara Wagner. Barbara, I think I'm gonna have to make a change real quick to be able to allow you to comment. So hold on a sec. Barbara, I hope you're still with us, or that you'll be coming back in as we work with technology. So,
can you hear me
now? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself at the lower corner, but thank you. I'll comment quickly. We talked about this a couple of years ago with the measure P or V at the treehouse in the conference room. Way back then, I did say, you know, as far as old buildings from the 1920s, it's good to look at the numbers. You know, how much does it cost to renovate versus tear down, especially these old buildings. I'm okay with letting some of these buildings go. And yes, if John Stackleth is concerned about rental space, that's fine. But I'm okay with letting go some of the buildings that we're either not using or in really bad shape, like the Rod and Gun Club. I don't know about the arts and crafts. If it's only being used for storage, I don't know how important it is to keep that and what it'd be used for, but sometimes looking at the numbers is very helpful. I support the restroom expansion. I support, you know, the water tank on top of Spring Hill to help with the pressure. And I support the sewer system hookup, and I support the undergrounding of the power lines. So I think that addresses it.
All right, Barbara, thank you for your input. And so now I'll move on to the next person, Juliana. I think we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I was just going to bring up my other question got answered. As far as building and utilities, I don't know if this is going to be in a future section, but the circulation flow of the parking lot areas and vehicle travel in the city park is a large concern held by city staff at Mount Shasta. I know that we've talked to Tom a number of times, and we hope that that factors into the master planning process. It has gotten, I think, a little bit better with the boulders that are put in place to kind of limit vehicle traffic over by the Headwaters Spring. But that's something that should probably be included in the overall plan. The only other second thing I was going to say, because, you know, as a city employee, I do frequent the Upper Lodge, you know, before COVID kind of secluded us all. And one of the things I noticed is that the overall nighttime lighting is really lacking in terms of security or just kind of genuinely feeling safe. And there might be an ability to look at a lighting plan because I have left the Upper Lodge late at night after meetings, and I'm typically by myself, which is not ideal. And I've just noticed that there's a lot of really good dark hiding spots that are in the park and kind of make me feel uneasy in general. So if there could be some consideration to nighttime lighting or doing a nighttime audit of the park, where you could go around and just take a look at the security features that you have in place, I think that would help people overall. And because I do know that we do have, you know, later events that go on in the upper lodge and dance hall. So, you know, I agree with John Stackfleff that I think having those facilities open for rental is really important. But when you start getting late night events, I think the lighting and security really needs to be improved. So thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. That's great stuff. All right, we are going to move on to Belinda. I've just hit the button, so I believe we should hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I am not as, I think all the council people and and Juliana have just great stuff to say. I really think that the lower lodge should be rebuilt because it also has that big pad out there that could be, we could use it for a much better venue for other events rather than just the upper lodge, which is the only one that kind of functions very well. The dance hall obviously may not need to be started all over. Rod and Gun Club, it should be taken down and rebuilt. It's a disaster. And what I really notice is that the handicap access to all of these older buildings is marginal and really should be addressed because it's just not, it's like weird down slopes to the buildings. And, you know, I mean, I don't know how exactly that would be fixed, but it certainly needs to be looked at. And there was something else. I think the lighting idea is great, but I don't want it to be flooded. It's almost like it needs to be motion censored or something, or, you know, be able to turn off and on when as needed. There was something else I was going to say, but unfortunately there's been so much good information that I've forgotten it. I don't know, all those weird little outbuildings, they just look really bad. And I think we should make this park look more attractive. It's, you know, it's cute in its old way, but let's make this park kind of happen, you know, in a modern sort of way. And storage should be where storage belongs, down by the maintenance shed, maybe. Oh, I know the thing I really think, I don't know whether there's security cameras there and that kind of stuff, but boy, there should be, because of the things that happen there. And it should be kind of almost plugged into the police department. But I don't know what's happening with that, because nowadays there's really great security cameras that aren't as expensive as they used to be. So it's something to look at because of all the elements that use the park at the wrong times of the day. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Belinda. I have a question in the chat panel that I'm going to read. And it's from Michael Williams, and I believe John had mentioned it. The question is there a reasonable strategy for dealing with the increasing probability of fire while keeping the large trees and natural feel of the park? And Michael, what we're aiming for tonight is to really collect input, but we're not going to the place of, you know, speaking to those questions yet. Although as we continue through the master plan update process, we do expect to get to the point where we're having conversations about points that came up frequently. So I wanted to read that question for the sake of sharing it into the audio record of the recording, and so that people on Facebook could see it and have it be part of all of the consideration that goes into the master plan update. And so with that, I have one more hand raised, and we'll check. Ken Brummel-Smith, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I was just suggesting that you already did it, to read some of the chat ones if they don't raise hands. So thank you.
Okay, super. All right, then we are ready to move on, Tom, with your presentation. So please continue.
Thank you. And actually, we will be talking about fuels reduction a little later on here. And Juliana brought up the road circulation issue, which is where we're headed right now. So I have this broken out into the entrance location, emergency access, one-way versus two-way, parking improvements, RV, trailer, and bus parking, and stormwater runoff. This is a drawing that I've prepared that shows potential improvements at the park, just to help get conversations going. So I'll just go through it with my cursor here briefly. This is the existing access. There could be RV parking up here to get buses, big vehicles away from the high use areas down below. Room for quite a bit more parking. The roads could be made two-way instead of one-way, nice loops. For years, we've looked at the possibility of tying in underneath the railroad and Mount Shasta Boulevard, at least with trail tunnels, if not a road. And then there's emergency access issues. So I'm going to speak to all of that in this section, starting with the entrance. Many, many years ago, a city planner named Robin Dawson happened to be in the vicinity when a propane truck got high centered right here. And she knew the number of Southern Pacific Railroad and called them, and they stopped a train somewhere right about here. And that would have been a disaster, obviously, for the whole north end of town. The grade, as you can see here, it dips down. It actually gets 20 feet lower than the tracks on Mount Shasta Boulevard, and the property over on this side has been filled, but originally it was quite low as well. So topographically, it's very feasible to go through there, and if you could get rid of both of these at-grade crossings, you make things much safer, plus you get rid of the horns and the inconvenience of the signals. So that's something we're looking at. This is in McLeod underneath Highway 89 as an example of a pedestrian and bicycle undercrossing. So if nothing else, that could be done to connect City Park to Spring Hill. This is Nixon Road right here. And for quite a few years now, we've looked at an emergency access tie-in to the end of Kingston Road. At the present time, the City Park has no secondary access. There are two crossings over the tracks, but if a train blocks both of those, then you're trapped in. And Mike Rodriguez mentioned at one point, I think they were trapped for 8 hours in there. So this routing is the most recent. We had talked to Erickson about going through the bulk fuels area. This is the propane facility. We'd had conversations with them in the past as well. The property here is owned by Dignity Health. So this conversation is ongoing, but it's the City Park needs some sort of solution. The idea of going two-way, this would only need to be widened a little bit to fit road standards for two-way traffic. It could have a turnaround at the bottom and come out so that you could also have one way in and out other than a gated secondary way in and out that could be opened for special events. We had talked for many years about closing off the lower road by the springs, and finally were able to do it just several years ago. The boulders were a temporary solution. We had wanted to get grant money and go with bollards or post barriers. Shannon just told me today that they're having trouble with motorcycles going through here, so it may boil down to putting a bar gate in. Either way, with extension of the trail system, we wanted to come up through here and over into the lawn area so that it wouldn't be quite as steep, because we're trying to achieve ADA compliance. So that might be a solution to have trail access here and a way to make it more difficult for motorcycles. The area down by the lawn and the gazebo is just really haphazard parking. There's a way to make it much more efficient with double ranked 90-degree parking. So that's being looked at. And as I mentioned before, the idea of getting buses, large RVs out of the lower area where it gets congested so easily. There's also a stormwater runoff problem. We had the rain just a few days ago, and you could really see where it had come right through here, coming off of the Upper Lodge parking. This armored dip has been there for many years. People probably think it's a speed bump, but it was actually required by the Department of Fish and Game many years ago because they didn't want runoff to get directly into Spring Creek and then into the hatchery intake, because the hatchery takes its water out of Spring Creek. So again, these are what I was looking at is two-way traffic, more parking here. Here's the existing parking by the lower lodge and the dance hall, which could be expanded more. And down below there by the lawn, you could make that more efficient. Over here by the maintenance shed and the group picnic, that could be made more efficient. By the way, this drawing shows the sewer line routing, that dashed line that would follow the trail all the way out to Kingston Road. And for stormwater, we're looking at picking up even on the east side with small detention basins so that we're intercepting with bioswales all of the parking runoff all the way down through the park and keeping it out of Spring Creek that way. So that's the end of that section. Hopefully people will have some feedback for us on that.
All right, folks. So, I'm keeping an eye right now to see if we've got anyone raising their hand. If you have any comments or ideas that you want to share. Michael Williams, I am going to unmute you right now. Michael, we should be able to hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Renee. I just wanted to note that, Tom, you mentioned the two-way use of the road in the park and road standards that it would need to meet. As far as I know, there is no standard for a two-way road. There are many two-way roads that are substandard width. And in fact, in all my years of accessing the park, I've seen that road successfully used as a two-way road for many, many events, even when people are sometimes parked along there. So just to note that it could be used as two-way right now if we wanted to. That's all.
Renee, should I respond?
Tom, I think that what we'd like to do is keep moving on in terms of collecting input. I am certain that you and Michael could have a lengthy conversation about this. So we've got a couple of other people who want to comment. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with that, and recognizing that we certainly can have additional conversations, and that if there's something like this where there is a detailed discussion, that certainly can happen. People can talk with Tom and talk with Shannon outside of the meeting format. So I'll ask the two of you to follow up that way. So Michael, I am going to mute you and go down the list. So John Stackfluff, I'm going to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just very short on this one. I like Tom's plans with respect to the improvements, parking, road-wise, and I have just become a fan of the underground tunnel entrance, given some of the stories he put forth. Although I think that might be pretty expensive. Sounds like a worthy project to help with some safety issues. All I have to say. The tunnel from the Spring Hill area is what I'm referencing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Let's see. Barbara Wagner, I'm shifting over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so as far as the emergency access, is it possible to follow the sewer line down to Kingston instead of heading towards the tracks? That's my question. If that's a possible emergency access route, because that takes away the whole train issue. I also support the tunnel underground for access. I like the two-way parking area. I'm just wondering whether we really need cars down by the stage except for load in for musicians, and by the maintenance building except for people who actually are employed. I'm just wondering whether we really need parking all the way down into
Renee, somehow you're muted too. Everybody just went dead there.
Oh, I'm back, Tom. I think that was my misuse of Zoom technology. I'm gonna move on to Juliana. Here you go.
Thanks. Excuse me. Just to let you guys know about the properties on the other side of the road in relation to your tunnel. I'm not sure. I know I did get the property owner in contact with Tom, but just to let you know, they are moving forward with that mini storage proposal still. So that might be something you guys want to talk to the private property owner about if you are seriously considering the tunnel underground. I think it's a neat idea and actually would work really well in that situation, but you're definitely going to have to move a little bit quicker on that property in terms of getting a hold of it, since they are moving forward with that proposal. The second thing is I have a issue personally that there really isn't any bike parking that's really easily identified at Upper Lodge or any of the other lodges. And so I've talked about in the past promoting a bike to city council or planning commission meetings. Month of May is bike to, wherever month. And so that was one of the things that has come up. I know one of our commissioners does bike frequently to the Upper Lodge, and he usually has to chain it to the railing that goes into the doorway, which is not ideal, obviously, for ADA and bike security and things like that. So yeah, if you could include additional bike parking and make those easily identifiable for people, that would be my personal suggestion. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Juliana. All right. Now I am going to move on. I'm trying to find you right now. MC2. I know you had your hand raised, but I am not seeing you right now. It looks like you might have dropped off. Michael Williams has his hand raised again though, so I'm going to move on to Michael. Michael, I think I have you unmuted. Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. One thing I haven't seen so far, and maybe I've come into this process maybe a little late, is usually there's a group of philosophies and goals that this type of planning process sets out, which guides specific improvements. Is there a way for me to access that? Second comment is that I'm also in favor of the underground tunnel. If that doesn't work, the Active Transportation Committee had submitted a grant application to build a roundabout at that northernmost Nixon Drive access. And that would be not only a way to manage that intersection, but also provide traffic calming for the cars coming off the highway. And if the underground tunnel doesn't work, or until it is installed, that might be an improvement that would both help motorist safety and provide a way for pedestrians and cyclists to access the park more safely. And also, I want to chime in on the parking as well. Last comment, I promise. The whole idea of creating trails and bicycle facilities and pedestrian facilities, one of the benefits is to reduce the amount of motor vehicle travel that occurs. And an excellent way to do that is to reduce the parking that's available. And what I see is a lot more parking, whereas I'd really like to see even less parking than there is now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We've got one more comment. Let me get to it. Okay, Ken, go ahead.
Tom, if the underground access didn't go through, what do you think about the idea of having some type of gate that could be closed in case of emergencies to keep all visitors out?
The emergency access issue was having to do with people who are already in there. They've had problems with trains breaking down or otherwise blocking those exits for a number of hours. So that would be the issue. You know, the worst case scenario is it's in the middle of the Blackberry Music Festival and you need to get an ambulance in there. That's the main thing we're looking at here in terms of vehicular emergency access.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of preventing access, not preventing egress. So if we had to close the park completely for some reason, we don't have any way to do that right now. If the only access was a tunnel, that seems pretty easy, but I'm just wondering if we should also have a backup plan for a gate that would prevent access if we needed to.
I have it in a drawing. I can show you that.
That's all right.
Yeah, well, I'll show you when we get back to the slideshow.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. We look to have picked up all of the questions and raised hands. So, Tom, we are ready to start your presentation again.
Well, I will preface it by saying that thank you, Renee, for the caution about Michael and I do tend to get into a lot of detail design-wise, but the answer I have actually relates to Barbara Wagner's concern as well, and that is that when we did the road reroute at Tawandali Park in Dunsmuir, they required 20 feet for two-way traffic, and when I did the emergency access for Eschaton for Shasta 1 and 2 units, the city of Mount Shasta wanted 20 feet, and I measured the entrance road to the city park, and I think it's something like 17. So, you know, it's a minor point. Michael's right. People go the wrong way all the time. It's very drivable both directions. At this juncture, I'm just making that acknowledgement. And actually, the much narrower road is over by the Rod and Gun Club. So we're just going to look at all of that as part of master planning. Oh, and because of the 20-foot requirement for emergency access for fire trucks and that sort of thing, it's not feasible to use the trail along the Kingston ditch where the sewer line would be routed. That's through a wetland area. The impacts would be huge. That's why we're looking at the other routing. Anyway, the next category here, recreational facilities. This is where we do talk about trails and bridges and benches and interpretive panels, picnic areas. Should have made playgrounds plural here. The gazebo, stage, lawn, and many people probably don't know there's a disc golf course out there now near the freeway, and some existing and proposed courts. So here we are back to that drawing, and we're looking at a gate, ability to gate this, and you could put boulder barriers. There's ways to close the park and have it be closed to vehicles. But this section, we're talking about recreational facilities. These trails are finished, and they were paid for by the Trail Association and Rotary. The work was done over the last several years, considerable upgrade. This dirt road existed, but we made a turnaround at the bottom. We also did a bunch of fuels reduction, which I'll get to in a moment. But what was interesting is that horrible car wreck that happened here where several people died and there was a fire, that happened right here, and the fire department was able to get to it very quickly. So it just served as an example of why it's so important to have this kind of access designed in, which then also means all the way back here, you need to make sure that there aren't vehicles blocking that, which they do now quite often. Here's the trail contractor putting wood chips on the trail along the creek after having graded it out. This is an interim fix on the trail along the Kingston Ditch. So we do have connectivity all the way to Kingston Road now, but the ultimate goal is to have this 8 feet wide paved concrete rather than asphalt, because in wetlands, concrete lasts much better. If you look at the Nepenthe Trail system at the hospital, you can really see the difference. Here's the Kingston Ditch. This is why it's really not feasible to get a 20-foot wide emergency road here. This is the portion that's owned by the Land Trust now. This was also orchestrated by Rotary and the Trail Association and Scott Valley Bank. The developer had walked away from it, 5.5 acres, and Scott Valley Bank was great. They worked with us and we were able to pick it up for $32,000. The longstanding bridges in the park, 2 actual bridges, upper bridge and lower bridge, pretty funky. I mean, somebody got really creative here with culverts and sewer pipe or storm drains. But the wooden part of this is old and rickety. The upper and lower bridges need to be redone. The old boardwalks you can see here, different styles entirely. These trails are great. There's no interest that I've heard of getting rid of any of these, but definitely upgrading the boardwalks. This boardwalk was an interim solution that Rotary did to get across the creek itself in order to tie in from the city park along the creek and then all the way down to Kingston Road. So there's a trail up along the Kingston Ditch, and then there's another trail that's down by the freeway fence, and that's what this accesses. And depending on what the community wants, if the main trail up by the Kingston Ditch is paved and turned into a multi-use trail, this doesn't need to be upgraded anymore. It could be. Originally, I was thinking of a permanent bridge here at the same time of redoing the other 2 bridges in the park, but this works quite well and people seem to like it. We have a bench problem, serious problem, and even more recent benches, they're losing their soil underneath the concrete pads, and different styles of bench. So one thing that would be great in the master plan would be for the community to decide on what type of bench it likes aesthetically and stick with that so that you have the same style. And for fundraising purposes, you could have dedication benches with just a little 3x5 bronze plaque right there that doesn't really detract from the bench as a whole, and it would be a way of getting the benches paid for. At this point in time, there's only one interpretive panel. It was put in at the headwaters when all the restoration work was done on that. The River Exchange was able to get a $250,000 grant, perhaps 10 years ago or so, and Chris Maroney was the contractor rebuilding the headwaters. And I have to share this story. He got in there and discovered railroad ties and pieces of rail buried inside the springs where everybody's been collecting water for years. So he partially dismantled all the rock at the back of the spring, got all that stuff out and rebuilt it. So it looks totally natural now, but it was a major restoration project. Other facilities still need attention. So this is the group picnic area. Major facelift needed in many areas around the park. This playground is in good shape. With the theme of a natural area here, the thinking was that Shasta Park is the logical place to really be more sports oriented. And there's a playfield there that there's talk of upgrading, but it's nice to have something here. So one thought was to keep this one and maybe get rid of this or maybe consolidate with the other one. This one is right down by the creek. Actually, with the theme of a natural area, it would be nice to move this away from the creek. The Rotary Club has been talking about upgrading this gazebo for many years because it's used as the stage for the Blackberry Music Festival. and they want to put in a sound system as well. But Shasta's Park would actually be a better location because it's quieter. And that's an active discussion going on right now. And in our next webinar that will focus on Shasta's Park, we can show you where that would be, and we'll talk about it more. There's nothing been decided. I mean, that's the whole point of master planning. But as you can see here, there's a certain user group that tends to take this over. And I'll be dealing with that in the next section. But the gazebo could use some work. The city park has a wonderful lawn, thanks in part to the fact that it used to be wetlands, but also it is well irrigated. Great views. That part of it makes the venue excellent for Blackberry Music Festival. This is the beginnings of a disc golf course. There's 9 holes. It could be expanded to 18. It could have the chain baskets if grant money could be obtained. I think it's something like $8,000 per basket. So at least it started. And what you see growing here, this is teasel, which is a non-native invasive weed into wet meadows. And we would like to eradicate it regardless. But if you come in and mow a wet meadow high with a flail mower every year, they do that out at Hill Road and they use it to feed cattle. It doesn't hurt the meadow. So that could be part of a long-term maintenance plan. It reduces fire danger, and it would facilitate disc golf. These are bocce ball courts. This one's serving as a de facto stormwater detention basin. We have no idea what the demand might be for having bocce ball courts at City Park anymore, so we need to know from the community whether or not they want them. Somebody brought up earlier tonight about the courts down at the lower lodge. This is the back side of the lower lodge. So it's set up now to be basketball courts. There's been some discussion of putting in some pickleball courts there. These courts were recently done over at the golf course where tennis court was converted over to pickleball. So that's what's going on. And as I said at the beginning, I'm dealing with the headwaters deck area separately. So if the public has anything to say about any of these topics right now, I'll turn it back over to Renee.
All right, thanks, Tom. Mona, we're going to start off with you. We should be able to hear you now.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sounds like kind of a deep voice for Mona, I know. So this is Chris Morani. Sorry, I've tried 2 PCs, 3 browsers. I could not work the chat or the questions and answers, and the hand function went on and off continually. So now I'm on my wife's iPad, which naturally, of course, works, but I don't know how to function it. So, so just a little background. And so my apologies, I could not hear any other questions from public members. I only was able to hear Shannon and Tom. So my apologies if there's some redundancy here. But first off, I want to comment about some general infrastructure issues at City Park. Would this be the appropriate time to do that?
Sure, since you missed out before.
Okay. So I served on the board for 8 years in years past, and I was the mover and shaker that wrote the grant application years ago for the Headwaters Improvement Project as a board member. And then I also took the state committee out when they did their look-see visit for that project. And I think I did a pretty good job of selling it. And the project was funded. And about 6 months later, the state, I think you remember in 2007, bond rating tanked and the funds were all pulled back. And naturally, as a board member, my company cannot bid on the work, so I never did the work. Years later, I was off the board, and lo and behold, the project was refunded by the state. I bid on it and got the work. We had gone through, the board had gone through a very extensive public scoping process at the time to get public input on the wants and needs. And then the park was closed during the week while we performed the work. And 3 notices in the paper over a 3-month period, pretty well advertised when the work was going on. During the course of the project, I donated substantial portions of the work, including the good portions of the concrete to complete the sidewalk through the lawn, which was underfunded, all of the colored and stamped concrete around the patio at the headwaters, including the curved part that dips into the water because the contract didn't include any improvements there. And then also I donated almost the entirety of the rock slope protection on the wall above the spring. And I did hear Tom's little comment about, yes, there was a railroad arch in there in our pristine springs. There are still some railroad ties back in there that happen to be steel. I got all the creosote ones out that I could. I think the water probably runs pretty clean, but I think Tom probably already also pointed out there's a series of road cuts and fills above the spring. So that spring, from its origins where it used to surface, has been extended quite a bit. So I also have donated the cleaning and loading of brush for about 10 years at the city park and heavy equipment work there. But the bottom line is that I just want to let you know I care deeply about the park and the park facilities and the opportunities for recreation for particular youth, but all ages in our community. So I frequently go through that park, sometimes 3 or 4 days a week currently. And I'm very concerned about the type of activities that have kind of degenerated in the park. The boulders that Tom showed earlier in his slide presentation, I actually donated an excavator and placed those boulders, and it was no cost to the park district. So I guess my general comment is I feel strongly that it's time to fence and gate that park and regulate it. And the biggest problem I see that we have is, even though I've been 100% in support of the bond measure, both versions, the second version was written much better. The perception, I believe, in the community is that rightfully the district board has prioritized the project, let the public know who has the authority to approve funding of the projects. And the bulk of the money would be spent on City Park, as I recall, for the last bond measure. And rightfully it should be, it's the most in need. But the district members and the taxpayers don't really use that park because of the nature and character of many of the transient users that are there. And I know this is no secret to anybody currently on the board. And it's been an ongoing difficult issue. But I don't think, we tried, first we did temporary bollards in front of the springs, then we had people blocking the fire access. We had a total mess with fire access and emergency vehicle access. Then we went with the rock barriers, and now it's just backed up even further. I've seen 3 vans parked there selling crystals and ponchos and everything imaginable without a city permit. Every drummer down there, of course, thinks the entire world wants to hear their drumming 24/7 without consideration of the public good. And basically, I believe it's driven off your district members and owners of the rec district. And the playground facilities especially are not used. And I think as long as there's the public perception that the public doesn't use that park as much as it has been in the past, you'll have a very difficult time getting a bond measure passed. So I comment in the survey, I think I've made that point adequately now. Generally in infrastructure comments, the lack of bike parking at City Park and actually almost all the facilities for me. I've tried twice unsuccessfully in the past to get 2 new bridges for City Park down at the creek there. And I've built over 20 bridges, both vehicular and pedestrian, in my career. And I'm still kind of working on that. I still have connections with several bridge manufacturers, but they're in dire need of replacement. And I know, of course, Tom's identified that and has done a good job of bringing that to your attention. Everybody knows that. I will continue to work on availability of that and see if I can make something happen at a reasonable price or no cost to the district. And I think that summarizes my comments from again, sorry for the redundancies. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris, for your input. We are going to move on now to Belinda. Go ahead and try it, Belinda. I think we should hear you. Okay, Belinda, try it now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The pickleball courts that that's been suggested for the lower lodge paved area, I don't like the idea. I think it's much more appropriate to have it up with the skate park. I think that's much better used as a patio for bigger groups to rent and have outdoor, dine, like the Upper Lodge has picnic tables outside. Well, it could be a similar kind of thing where you could have a wedding and you could have nice tables out there, and it would be, it's fenced so people can't get in. And I think it's a better use of the pickleball is getting a little more energy than I think is warranted. So let me put it that way. The bocce ball, I don't know. It really is going to have to take a poll because I've only seen that maybe once in a while during the Blackberry Festival. The my kids used to love the weird trails in the park over the bridge, the wooden bridges and all, stomping around out there. But people are afraid to go to the park now. People don't take their kids there because they're afraid, because as is mentioned, the element that has taken over. And that's really maybe on the top of the list of things that need to be addressed, because it's become kind of creepy is what it has. And no one feels, anyway, that's enough of that. Thank you, Renee. I'm done.
All right, thanks, Belinda. Barbara Wagner, we are moving on to you now.
Okay, great. I would like to stay with the nature theme, even with the benches, and have something more natural, whether it's tree stumps or the boulders that we have in some of the other areas in town, like at the Sisson Meadow. As far as the courts, if you indeed want to make Shasta's Park the more sports-oriented field, I would move all those courts over to Shasta's Park. And
Hey, you have any?
I'm sorry, whoops. I'm sorry, did I lose you?
No, Barbara, you're fine. I took care of it. Yeah, good.
And definitely, I mean, I saw some of the pictures of much needed TLC in the picnic areas. I would, yes, definitely prioritize those. Small little fixes can make a big difference. And if you really want to have an atmosphere where people feel more welcome, you don't want to see trashed facilities, whether it's a barbecue pit or anything else, a broken bench. I mean, that feeling of brokenness attracts a certain person too. So I think the quicker you can get to those things that are easily fixable and would be a great benefit. It'd be low cost and easy to fix. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Barbara. John Stockleth, we're moving on to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, as quickly as I can. In general, I think a decision needs to be made. I think it's already trending this way as to a separation of activities between the two major parks. The trend obviously is for Shasta to be the recreation activities oriented park, and for City Park to be more passive and quietly recreational. So yeah, I guess I tend to, I definitely agree with Belinda on changing the basketball court to an outdoor al fresco patio deck for activities or eating or whatever. Pickleball, definitely lean towards Shasta for that, and I think that's been under discussion. Bocce ball, and there's also, I think, some horseshoe courts there, and I may have been the last person to use those like 3 years ago, but yeah, that's a worthy discussion as far as moving those. I like Tom's idea that he hinted at regarding consolidating the playgrounds to the one area closer to the buildings where the more modern structure is. And I'm a little bit ambivalent about the gazebo. I think it should be looked at as a real possibility for removal and replacement over at Shasta's. And I thank Tom for, thanks to Tom for showing us the Kingston Ditch Trail area. And I think he's made it clear that that cannot be a 20-foot wide road. And so for emergency access, his idea of going out through the little industrial area with Erickson and I think it's Suburban Propane, I think, makes sense to me. So there you have it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. Michael Williams, you're up.
Thank you, Renee. I hope you can hear me okay. My audio seems to be bogging out again. I'd like to make a comment about play areas and trails, the confluence of the two. Right now, our trails reflect really the audience of the Trail Association, people just going out for a because the rec district caters to a wider group of people than that. I'd like to see the possibility considered where there are spots along trails where you have one little play item. So for example, if you have a family using a trail and they have kids, there's a spot where they can stop and the kids can play on this one thing, or maybe even play in the water. That's even possible now with wetlands issues. But I'd like to see other amenities added to our trails, whether that be dispersed play areas, bird watching areas, viewpoints, things like that, rather than just a trail someone drives to and goes for a walk on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. That looks like all of the comments for this section. So Tom, we are back to you.
Okay, the next section is focused on the headwaters area, and Chris Maroney summarized very well the past improvements and the road barriers. I want to talk a little bit more about that and ADA compliance, water collecting, dog management, loitering and craft sales, that sort of thing. Regarding ADA, Chris not only put in the boulder barriers across the lower road, but also here with what's intended to become handicap parking, with the lower part of the road, the level part, being the ADA compliant portion of the access to the Headwaters Spring. Coming down from the parking at the lower lodge is too steep. So that ADA compliance has already been considered. There's a lot of things that are going on here that aren't good for a variety of reasons. Most immediately, in that past picture, nobody's wearing a mask and you're not seeing physical distancing going on there, but that's hopefully a short-term issue. This is a much more ongoing issue. We've got 2 dogs here in the springs, and people come over here to collect water. People do wade here. People will bathe there. A lot of water collecting, and a lot of the people I've noticed will go up to where it's coming out of the rocks that Chris has placed that they probably think are natural. And initially, I was running with the idea of we've got to keep people off of these slopes. Chris rebuilt all of this and it's partially revegetated. But if you look at other springs in our region, there's lots of ferns, it's very lush. This is hammered. So what I thought of was if we did more large stepping stones down here and actually accommodated people collecting water and came up with various creative ways to keep people off the slope, we could actually reduce the impact on the slope. And having stepping stones down here is 0 impact. It's just a different shaped rock than what's already there. So that was, that was just one idea. Another idea was if you, and I suggested this originally for Parker Plaza, where they were having a dog problem as well as a user problem. And the city ended up moving picnic tables out of there and basically simplifying the park. But I was thinking if you put in a low fence or rock wall and you have a gate, you could even have it be spring loaded so it would always stay shut unless somebody went through it, with signage right on it that said no dogs. You would make it kind of in your face physically, hey, stop here, no dogs. And it might just be one way to help regulate use in this area. And then the stepping stone idea out here. It's out of control right now. It's just very unfortunate. And as far as the health of the water goes, the rec district has had these signs up for quite some time. People think it's the best water on earth. The rec district office has said many times, just take it out of the tap, that city water from Cold Spring, and it's guaranteed to be safe. But people want to have this experience right here. And that's fine. I think it just needs to be much better managed. It's interesting that I helped Chris when he was putting in the boulders. He did the heavy lifting, of course. I just stood there like an idiot. But I was expecting an uproar from the public. And it was amazing. Almost immediately, people adapted. They started bringing carts, parking up there at the Lower Lodge parking lot. I never heard a single complaint. It was long overdue to get the cars away from that area. So that was a first huge step in the right direction. This idea of modifying the old dam, everybody loves the look of a spring pool with that crystal clear, icy cold water. But if it's going to draw people to swim in it, to bathe in it, wade in it, let their dogs run loose in it, the reason there's a pool there in the first place is because it's a historic dam that fed the Kingston ditch. And there's an intake right at the headwaters there that most people don't even realize. And the water would still go into that intake without that spring pool being there. So you could take the log out that was put there. The dam is partially breached anyway. I don't really favor that solution. I would actually like to restore the historic dam and have more of a spring pool. But that relates to the next item. People do wade downstream. At the lower bridge, for a while, somebody had hauled a picnic table out into the middle of the creek. And I have a great photo of some girls sitting out there, some teenagers sitting at the picnic table in the middle of the creek on a hot summer day. I couldn't find a photo, so I'm sorry I couldn't share it with you tonight. But if that type of use could be relocated downstream away from the headwaters, obviously it's going to be better for the people who are collecting water there, as well as the ambiance of a quiet place to appreciate a spring. So all of that needs to be looked at. This, as everything else, key issue with community, and we really need to hear various ideas that the community might have on how to deal with this area. So again, Renee, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Chris, you're up.
So yeah, I generally agree with what has just been presented. I just want to point out that the split rail or sawn rail fence that is up on top above the springs on that the lower side of the road cut, and it comes down the slope. The idea with that original design with the landscape architect who did that project was to try to block public access from those two directions. And obviously that has not been effective. We actually barriered that upper parking area further to the south to try to prevent, people were, parking directly above it. Now at least it's backed up a bit. So that was added and then pretty much violated the first year. Now, Tom has talked about some of the riffraff, and I'm trying not to be judgmental here, but just to give you an idea, just as I was getting off the board, or the maintenance manager there witnessed a couple having sex in the headwaters. So, I mean, this just gives you some idea of the things that can go on there. And there were continually and maybe still problems with people plugging in everywhere they possibly could to get power for phones or their vans or whatever. you know, there's no end to this. And again, I want to stress, I think, the importance of regulating access, because I do believe through social media that the word will get out to people who think they can live at City Park, that this maybe isn't such a cool place to be anymore. Relating to improvements at the headwaters, actually, we were required throughout the course of construction, the last time the headwaters were worked on, to have a 6-foot-high security fence around the entire project. While we were there, even though I had all the regulatory permits in place that were required for the job, including Fish and Game and Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Game wards were called 3 times saying they caught us dumping diesel fuel into the creek, which was absolutely false. After a while, they wouldn't respond because they would come down and check us out. And I knew the players from Fish and Game, and they're like, what is going on here? So there was a very, very small percentage of people that were quite persistent. I was threatened numerous times. We had our gates unchained and people walked through during construction hours. It was pretty amazing, actually, what happened. Finally, I had to have the police department come down there and randomly kind of enforcing violation of our gates and construction zones. So just kind of be prepared for that. I'm all for these improvements, but I just think the district really needs to be prepared in terms of announcing in advance what work will be done and really making the public aware of it, and then really being ready to enforce it. Not having a 6-foot-high chain link fence around the entire project when work is being done is really not an option. That's the absolute minimum. And then just for reference, the dam has, the little coffer dam below the springs has been rebuilt 3, maybe 4 times. John can, you know, the maintenance manager there can tell you a little bit more about that, but it's generally just been rebuilt to maintain the typical height of the water that you see there now. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Juliana, we are moving on to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I've talked about this with a couple of people in regards to behaviors that you don't want to see at the park. There's kind of 2 ways you can deal with it. And I do like, you know, personally, I do like the installation of some features at the headwaters to kind of prevent certain activities. But one of the things we talk about is called the soccer mom effect. It basically means that as you get more people in the park that are exhibiting behaviors that you feel are in regulation or in the realm of approvable behavior, the more of those people you have, the more it pushes out the other people who are not abiding by those, you know, social rules. And it does suck having to do those confrontation pieces, but I worked with a park in Wisconsin that had some similar issues, not necessarily people in the water doing that stuff, which is interesting, but not surprising. But you do have to have a lot, it's more manpower related and more having people there. We recommend getting reflector vests or safety vests because it somehow establishes a role of authority for people, and just having a number of park stewards to help people understand, you know, that's not an appropriate behavior. And when you do that long enough, that behavior starts to ingrain that certain things are not appropriate and certain things are. So that is one way around it. It does rely on a lot of volunteerism and a lot of people actually being there. But the other thing you can do is kind of similar to the improvements that you're saying, is program in certain things to prevent those behaviors. So for example, picnic tables near the headwaters could be permanently affixed to the ground, as opposed to being able to be moved into that, you know, wading pool or the disruption of the wading pool. I don't have an opinion either way. I think it's a pretty little section, but I don't personally go to it because it's, you know, more of a touristy thing. But those are kind of 2 different ways you can tackle things, is programmed improvements. The other thing too is programming walking groups that go through the park at certain times every single day. You know, just getting a group of 6 or 7 people who consistently walk. I mean, I understand COVID put some restrictions on that, but as you have people walk through the park and establish these schedules, you're able to get basically free security and surveillance. And those people, when they know what the procedures are to like report something that's happening that's not an approvable behavior, you know, they can do that for you. So those are kind of 2 ways you can adjust some of these issues you're having with behaviors. And you know, we're always here at the city to support that too. So I can sit down and talk about that more if you'd like.
All right, thanks, Juliana. Barbara, we are moving to you.
Okay. I was a little bit surprised when I saw those signs first go up that says the water hasn't been tested and it's not advised to drink. But I'm wondering if we could actually test the water quality and compare it to the faucet water and have some science there so people know what it is they're collecting. It might be an interesting way to educate. I do support the separate sort of area, keeping the dogs out and having maybe a little fence to state that, and have another area where people are invited to wade in the water. I also support the improved boulders for boulder hopping for humans. Yeah, I think the homelessness issue, which is, if that's what it is, that's appearing at the park, is only going to get worse if, as COVID continues. The prediction is that the homelessness situation will be approximately 3 times what we experienced in 2008 with evictions, and so it's just the beginning. And I think the city does need to address the homelessness issue in the long run. It just hasn't come up yet for us. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Barbara. Chris, we're coming to you.
Yeah, just real quickly, I'd like to comment on testing the water supply. So been the volunteer general manager of the Sierra Club Foundation Hut for about 30 years. And as you probably all know, there's about 720 acres there in the stone hut built in 1922. And spring water and a solar composting toilet is generally what attracts people to that area. It's a big attraction. And we have tested the water there with Rick and Linda Chitwood and myself for about 30 years. And it's a tough site. It's 2 miles up, 2 miles down, 1,000-foot elevation gain. Not an easy site to always access. And it's been a fair amount of work, but we have a little advantage at that site in that it's a more mountain environment where people will, no matter what you do, get water out of the natural seeps and springs that are numerous on the south side. And it's we're fully surrounded by the wilderness. We're inholding the wilderness. Unlike a city park, I think, those signs were put up, I believe, right after I got off the board. I can't actually recall, but this is all about spreading the risk and insurance. And I think when you have a public municipality with a natural spring, I think without those signs, your insurer, I'm almost certain, will tell you you're leaving yourself wide open. And the JPA on your insurance group may even drop you over that issue. It's a pretty serious issue. So even though, I don't have a strong feeling either way, if people want to drink the water or not, that's certainly up to them. But I think the message has to be that they do it at their own risk, one way or the other. And just saying you do it at your own risk doesn't, of course, meet the language that's required to say, hey, we're not on the hook. That means another thing that says maybe it's okay to do, maybe it's not. So it becomes an insurance and a legal issue. But just be prepared if you go down the route of the municipality providing spring water that they're implying is safe. It's a whole other can of worms. There's going to be a testing regimen and incredible amount of compliance. I've worked with the Regional Water Quality Control Board over this issue before, and it opens up a whole other host of issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. And with that, Tom, we will go back to the next portion of your presentation.
Well, this segues nicely into the user group issue. So I do want to talk about that. Serious problems there with camping, fires, trash, human waste, drug use and sales, dogs, unauthorized overnight use. So this bumper sticker may or may not sum it up, at least in an amusing way. But what's been interesting for me in being involved in this for so many years and talking to so many people and actually taking a lot of action, which I have some photos of coming up, it's distilling down to not so much the users, but the uses. that it is a public park. It's open to everybody. We're a culturally diverse country. So it's not so much who's coming there and enjoying it as it is what are they doing when they're there, and how do we guide it in the direction. I liked what Juliana was saying about the soccer mom effect. Setting an example of the right uses, having the regulations, having the patrolling, steering this thing back to where, fine, if you show up with dreadlocks and want to wear camo clothes, whatever, play drums, but don't go bathing in the headwaters. You know, don't, there's a no smoking ordinance in the whole park. Anyway, that's kind of where this is evolving. And it's interesting that this was a problem at Parker Plaza to some extent too, and it's basically been moved to the city park. Not that there wasn't a problem there anyway, but definitely bad now. So 3 or 4 years ago, this is what we were starting with. There were a number of encampments out in the forested wetland areas. And the thing that was so frustrating about this is that it wasn't just the camping, it was all the litter and the human waste. And it just, and if that weren't enough, the fires. There have been 3 different transient caused fires in the last 10 years from Kingston Road out towards the city park, in addition to the vehicle accident that occurred. 2 of them now, actually, that caused fires. But so we, and when I say we, Rotary and the Mount Shasta Trail Association and the Rec District partnered and got the Deadwood inmate crews out there and just started opening things up. And the idea here was that there was a serious fuels loading problem in the city park, and that needed to be dealt with regardless. But that dense vegetation was also providing privacy for a lot of encampments. And I should point out that at least my understanding of the statistics is that we're mostly talking about transient activity, vagrants, not homelessness. At the time we started this program, I was told there were something like 12 bona fide homeless people, but most of it was the chosen lifestyle of people coming to the headwaters, the spiritual draw of the mountain, living in nature, and doing it in a very sloppy way. So we got in there and opened it up, and it made a huge difference. And actually, we did see families start to return again to the park for a while, but now it's started to go the other direction. And there are so many things that could be done in terms of cleaning up the uses. And public input on these other sections has really touched on that. But this, I don't have that many slides on it. I just wanted to open this up and hear what other people may have to say about what they would recommend. Over to you, Renee.
Okay, thanks, Tom. John Stackcliffe, we're going to start with you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I look at this section tying in with the problems related to the spring. I think the spring is the big attraction. Don't really want to limit access to it too much, but my main comment is that a security system, whether, well, it should be a combination of electronic surveillance. We talked about that with Measure P, getting help by tying in with Mount Shasta PD. I think that'll be helpful for the more egregious problems, but for daily ongoing problems, there's just going to have to be uniformed, to a certain degree, uniformed personnel that are paid for by the district to enforce the rules, the no smoking, no bathing, dog control issues, until the word is out that these behaviors are not tolerated at City Park. And I know Alan Nebellini's trying to do that right now. I talked to him yesterday, but he doesn't have the time to enforce the rules all day long. So gonna need security guards, basically. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Um, Tom, we have a request from Michael Williams, and he's using acronyms, but I don't know what they mean. I'm just going to read this to you. He asked, maybe you can talk briefly about CPTED and trail design relating to these issues.
Not entirely sure, but in terms of trail design, we had a Zoom meeting with Michael a couple weeks ago with the Trail Association, and Michael was making the distinction between recreational trails and transportation trails. And it's an important distinction, but also they often overlap. And it's important here to know that what started as the Downtown to City Park Trail was intended to be a transportation trail to get people off the streets, especially kids, to provide safe access back and forth from the residential areas in downtown out to the city park. But it's also very much a recreational trail because it's beautiful, and it includes the Nepenthe trails at the hospital, or will when it's done. And for that type of trail, paved multi-use trail, minimum of 8 feet wide because you have shared uses on it. And in more urbanized areas, they're often going 12 feet wide. It was interesting when the Reading River Trail was first done up to Keswick Dam on the east side of the river. They went 8 feet wide, and it was just way too narrow, so they upgraded to 12. In Mount Shasta, we are a small town. There's cost issues, so I'm hoping 8 feet will work. The Nepenthe trails at the hospital are 6 feet, perfectly good for people walking side by side, but too narrow to share with cyclists. The trail we did from the city park over to Lake Street, that was a Rotary project in partnership with the school, the city, and the rec district. And that one is 8 feet wide. So if people want to get a sense of what it feels like, go walk that trail and think about sharing it with bicycles. Anyway, these design standards are very important. We are going to have a webinar focused specifically on the Mount Shasta Greenway network. And I've been working on consolidating all the trail routes that have been discussed in the community, everything that Michael Williams and ATC has worked on, including the Midtown Trail, everything I've worked on over the years with the Trail Association. And then Juliana's been doing a lot of recent work. I want to get it all in one place so that during that webinar, we can look at it. We can just have a conversation about priorities and standards, trail width, surfacing. So back to the city park, having this theme of a natural area, the idea was not to pave everything, to not have everything 8 feet wide, have some natural surface trails, some of them wide enough for side-by-side, like along the creek, some of them over there on the other side from the headwaters, narrow, cozy, the kids' adventure trails where the boardwalks are. So different levels of width and surfacing to provide different experiences for different users. There is an obligation to have ADA compliance, certainly to the headwaters and to parts of the creek. So that, in a nutshell, is where all of the design details come in. So Michael, if you're listening and you have more to say, please get a hold of Renee.
All right, thanks, Tom. And Michael did make a clarification for me on the acronym he used. It stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. What I want to do now, we have one more comment, and then I want to let you move on, Tom. So our next comment is from Barbara.
Yes, hi. I just letting you know that we did do a point in time count for the homelessness population in January. We do it in January because it's wintertime, and we think that most of the people that are homeless in January in Mount Shasta live here. And we did have some people that were traveling through on the I-5, but the assumption is that most of the people are local, and we came up with about 60 persons.
Whoa.
So it's not trivial. and it's not going away. And I think that we have to think about how to be with these people on some level. And I'm wondering if you're going to provide like outdoor showers. Is the Parks and Rec a facility that wants to have 24-hour bathrooms, or is it really City Hall that needs to address this? So we need to figure out how we can provide 24-hour bathrooms and not have homeless people go to the libraries. If you don't want them in your parks, where are they going? Are they going to the City Hall bathroom? I think that should be coordinated among all of us, because the problem's not going away. And if they have a place we can send them to, it's better than just saying not here to them all the time, because they hear that all the time. So just want to put that in there. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Barbara. And could you real quickly add a clarification on that point in time count where you came up with 60? What was the duration of time in which you guys made that count?
It was like 2 to 3 days.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we are back to you.
The homeless problem's definitely gotten worse. We did that work on the fuels reduction, maybe it's been 5 years ago, and certainly just visual observation, there's a lot more activity now than there was then. So up to now, we've talked about facilities and operations and maintenance security, but another huge function of the rec district is regarding programs and events. Senior nutrition, Meals on Wheels, holiday meals like Thanksgiving and Christmas, bingo, senior fitness classes, taiko drumming, Zumba, ecstatic dancing, Tai Chi. And Shannon wanted me to point out that bingo and senior fitness classes are sponsored directly by the district. The taiko, Zumba, ecstatic dancing, and Tai Chi are other groups that rent the facilities. And lately, Great Northern Corporation has taken over senior nutrition. And then, of course, events-wise, the Bioregional Ecology Center puts on Earth Day every spring. Rotary Club in recent years has been using the city park for the start and end of the Castle Craig Century. And the Blackberry Music Festival has been going on for something like 30 years. And there are special events. The River Exchange used to do fundraisers there. I met Sid at an Uptown Friday night event to raise funding for street trees that are now being cut down. That's a whole other issue. And there are community meetings, as Juliana was pointing out. I've certainly been to many of them in the past at the Upper Lodge. So the rec district plays a critical role with programs and events. And this is yet another really important topic for the community to let the rec district know what's working, what could be better, what's not there that would be nice to be doing. Just overall, just general feedback on those functions. I think, well, okay, not a very exciting photo of senior nutrition. Blackberry Music Festival, a hugely popular event, lots of fun. So I will turn it over again.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And I am taking a look right now. We don't have anyone raising their hands, but we would really like to hear from you. So if you want to chime in with, events and activities that you want to see, we'd love to hear from you. And Juliana, thank you for raising your hand. Why don't you go ahead?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mentioned this to Shannon when we met last week. But one of the things that could improve, I love all the, events that are, happening, and my mother-in-law does Tai Chi and everything like that. So I think there's a really cool atmosphere for that. One of the things that I experienced, working in the Upper Lodge and then doing some events in the dance hall previously, I know that the heater issue in the dance hall has been resolved, which thank you. The other thing is the acoustics in the building are really difficult to work with when we're trying to do any type of event that's, really amplified and we're recording. And so that's something that we've really struggled with, especially in the upper lodge, is that the sound system or the electrical system, we've had a lot of issues with that. So I think moving forward in, kind of in conjunction with your first kind of public comment section on the buildings, I think the overall programs and events can be much more diverse and successful with some additional audio equipment and lighting and things like that in those buildings. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Juliana. So I don't have any other hands raised right now. So Tom, I'm gonna hand it back to you.
Well, the next topic is funding. How do we pay for all of this? And for years, the rec district gets a portion of property taxes paid within the rec district boundary. It makes money off of building rentals and from revenue from programs. There's a Friends of the Park nonprofit group that was started recently to raise money via donations from the community. Proposition 68 is the latest of the state bond acts that is looking like it could help. It will help with the per capita portion of it, where the rec district automatically gets $177,000. It just has to tell the state how it's going to use it. So that alone is going to be really important in this master planning process to figure out what are the highest priorities. And then there are several categories of competitive grants that we have talked about applying for. And with those, we'll have to decide again what are the highest priorities. And certainly the sewer connection out to Kingston Road is high priority. That ties right in with that portion of the trail, so it makes sense to do the two together. Beyond that, I think as we work up all of the responses from the community, we'll try to distill out what the priorities would be and then report back to the community and get the master plan done. The Prop 68 requires that there be a community-driven master plan before you can apply for the competitive grants. The bond measures have been mentioned several times tonight. The rec district tried twice. It wants to try again. It wants to be responsive to some of the arguments given before as to what was wrong with it. It came close to passing both times. It was a majority both times, but it needs to be 2/3. So a lot of discussion will go into how to best package that and what would it be used for. And that relates right back to what are the highest priorities for the rec district. There's been talk of a daily parking fee, not only at City Park and Shasta East Park, but also at Lake Siskiyou County has considered this, with the approach being that local residents could get an annual parking sticker for a very low price, but it would be a way to make money from visitors to the area, especially all the people from out of area that go to see the headwaters. And it's not an unreasonable way to raise money. I forgot to mention it earlier, but there was talk of having a park host program where it's volunteer. They get to park their RV there and get utilities, but you get volunteer help managing the park from that. There was the idea of maybe having some RV spaces to charge for people to officially spend the night, partly to make a little revenue, but also as a way to try to curtail some of the illegal overnight use. That, like everything else, needs community feedback to see if that would be welcomed by the community. I'm sure there's other ideas people have. So the last bullet item I have here is public comments. So we'll just go back to Renee again on that.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Barbara, I'm going to call on you first.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit on the events, since the COVID thing is still alive and well, and the data isn't looking good right now. So let's just say COVID may be around for a few years, if not indefinitely. And I'm wondering how that's going to impact our events, and what are we looking at to, how do we pivot on events if we need to? And is that in the master plan? Whoops. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Keep going.
So that was kind of coming up for me. It's just that there's so many unknowns, and just wondering if we're thinking about, because the Thanksgiving is a much appreciated event, Blackberry Festival. It does take a lot of time to set up sound for musical events. Do we want to put any thought into thinking about whether a musical event should really be at Shastis instead of Blackberry? If we have a permanent setup, or considering a permanent setup for sound, some questions there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Barbara. Ken, I am going to move on to you.
Thanks. Actually, my question was to the last section. And because we have so many city folks on, I was just wondering if there's been talk at the city planning level about a senior citizen center. I moved here from Tallahassee, Florida, which is a much bigger city, about 200,000, but was on the board of the Tallahassee Senior Center, and it was managed through the Parks Department. They didn't have a Parks and Recreation, it was just called Parks Department. And just was wondering, you know, I saw John Hartch give a talk to the Rotary last week, and he said that we have 25% people over 65 in Siskiyou County. So just wondering if you know, is a more formal senior center. I know we have senior activities through the recreation district, but I was wondering if the city has looked at the idea of a senior center, and whether a senior center should be part of a recreation district activity.
Juliana, do you want to reply?
Oh yeah, I was like, put me in, coach. So yeah, so as far as aging communities and facilitating that, I was actually like, I'm on my other computer screen trying to pull up all of our stuff. I think even the city of Mount Shasta has even a larger percentage of population of individuals over the age of 50. We did do a 2018 study that collected some decent feedback on age demographics, the type of people that we attract, how many of them are retired, working full-time, independent contractors, stuff like that. So I've got all those numbers if you want them. As far as a senior center, one of the things I talked to Shannon about actually on Thursday, and we kind of toyed around with it, is, you know, one of the things being fleshed out in the master plan, which is, you know, maybe the Upper Lodge going to become more of a senior center type use, or an activity center for seniors, because it does facilitate the senior nutrition. You know, working with many other cities and stuff like that, you can do it in a number of different ways. So like you've discussed, you know, the Parks and Rec Department, or the Parks Department facilitating it. Typically in larger cities, you even have a specific, also I apologize if you can hear my dogs in the background. Close that door. So some larger cities even have a specific task force or department that just deals with aging communities. We have been in discussion with the Veterans Department about veterans housing and assisted living facilities associated with aging veterans. So the Veterans Affairs Department, we're still in discussion about where that facility would be located, but projected wise, it would be a 65 unit facility with complementary supporting services. So it could be fairly large. The city, I don't think, has the resources to be able to handle a public project related to that at this time. And I don't think the Parks Department does either. But I think it's definitely a larger conversation that I think we could even break out into a completely separate public outreach, just talking about aging communities and parks. There is a lot of funding associated with it. So if you do want to start down that avenue, I have a couple of different program contacts we can call, specifically at AARP is a big one. I have a couple people I've been working with there who would be able to support that type of service. It does take a lot to manage those types of programs. I think Shannon and the rest of the parks staff could probably talk to the senior nutrition program and just facilitating that, because then sometimes you get into federal fund management and that can be a little messy. But there is no strict plan. I think that's something we would love to sit down and really, iron out, because it's going to become a bigger and bigger theme, because we do attract a lot of people moving to the area of 50 and older, and then who are retirees. So it is going to be an emerging thing that we'll have to deal with. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And I think that we definitely should be talking about whether it becomes part of the master plan or not. I don't have a strong feeling about yet, but I just think that the idea of having a very coordinated plan for dealing with the rise in demographics would be an important thing to do.
All right. Well, thank you both for those comments. Chris, I'm going to move to you now. Chris, let's try it again.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to comment briefly on the daily parking fee. It has been discussed in the past. I personally actually like the concept because it's user-based and it seems appropriate. Of course, it's a thorny issue because you're dealing with people who might just want to be there 10 minutes. But I do think it would go a long ways to cleaning up the problem we have with people who think it's okay to live in the park every day, all day. And given that the cost, I've seen so many studies over the years from the city of Arcata, where I'm from, and some from this region, that the average parking space in Juliana probably knows exactly, but can vary from 10 to 30,000 per vehicle. So I do feel that walking and biking should be basically rewarded when they're using that facility, and that's also another way to facilitate, or to justify, I should say, a daily parking fee. And then just briefly, because you have it in here, the proposed assessment, I believe the next go round on this, if the board chooses to go down that path again, is that they need to outline very well and very specifically the projects. Even though there were some red herrings in letters to the editors that said that wasn't done, it actually was done, both in the language of the assessment and in public communication. But that's the hurdle that has to be overcome, is really identifying those specifically so taxpayers know how it's going to be used, and of course the authority or decision makers that allow that. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Tom, we are coming back to you.
Well, I'm not sure I have much left. I don't. So what we wanted to do now was to ask the participants if there's anything else that we haven't covered. And specifically, going back to Prop 68, they want the community to be actively involved in park design. So if anybody has any ideas on facilities that they would like to see that don't currently exist, or other changes, improvements, a lot has been said already. I've been taking notes the whole time, but if there's anything else that hasn't been discussed yet, or if you think of something later, please email, get on the website. We just want to get all the input that we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for the work that you've done to get tonight's meeting put together and to share all of this information. And I know Shannon's going to come in and wrap up the meeting for us this evening. I wanted to say a few things, and I'm sure Shannon will add to it. But as you take a look over at the chat, you can see that people have been making comments there, and all of that as a function of recording the webinar means that we're also collecting comments that way. And any of the questions that came through Q&A have also been collected too. So, we're collecting things that way. The chat window also has a link that was posted to to a survey specifically relating to City Park, and that's on the Park District's website. I do see a question in the chat right now. Should input for tonight just pertain to City Park? And the answer to that is yes. We will be holding a special meeting for Shasta Park and other facilities. Tom's mentioned that. So I'm going to pass this over to Shannon now so that she can help wrap this up. All right, Shannon, are you there? I had to unmute you, I think.
There we go. I'm here.
All right, great.
Yeah, thanks again for everybody who's sat through this presentation. Your input is greatly appreciated, and it does help us not only look at what we should be providing for the community, but also how we're going to find the funds to provide those to the community. So if you were unable to provide any input tonight and you think of something later, like Tom and Renee both said, please feel free to reach out to me at the district office. I will put my email address up here. And then after this presentation, you will be forwarded to the district website where you'll be able to provide input through a survey. And again, it's just another method of collecting data that we can use. This is the beginning of the master planning process for us. And from here, we will ask for more and more input from the community, and we greatly appreciate it. Renee, I'm gonna have you go ahead and unmute Michael Williams here. I see that his hand is raised.
Yep. All right, Michael, we are moving to you.
Thank you, Renee. This is a comment that is probably more than obvious to at least board members and Shannon, is that I'd just like to make a pitch or voice my support for dealing with the current issues first. We have this enormous backlog of, it's not even given it appropriate credit to call it deferred maintenance. It's like, you know, things are falling down around our ears at City Park. So I just want to make a pitch for, let's fix this stuff we have as a high priority and then move on to bigger and better things. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. And what we're gonna do, I don't see any more hands raised. So what I do want to say is that this recording will be posted on Facebook, on the district's Facebook page, and on the district's website, as well as the link to the survey. And I want to encourage all of you to share any of this material. You know, having the recording of the webinar means that people can get the information that Tom walked us through tonight. So I want to encourage you to share all of that. And when we do get our meeting for Shasta Park scheduled, to share that as well, because it is, like we've said throughout the night, so important to us to just get a tremendous amount of input from the community. And so at this point, there are no hands raised. So I will bring this meeting to a close by asking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Rush.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Lots of seconds.
I'm sure we're all in favor. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I don't believe we need a roll call vote on that. Thank you so much for everyone who stayed for the full meeting. We appreciate your input so much. And with that, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Thanks.